How are you doing, guys? ZDEyE here. So today I will be going over everything that we know so far relating Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. So obviously the first things first, it is the release date. 21st of June 2024 is the date that you should be marking in your calendars to experience this brand new adventure. So relatively early on, in 21st of February, we got a brand new first look trailer gameplay of the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. We got an opportunity of seeing so many new unique aesthetics, characters, bosses, and many ways of playing the game. Glamorous shots, beautiful aesthetics, incredible looking weapons, and varieties within them, and so much more. So firstly, I wanted to go over of its lore and what to expect out of it. Now we've got this information coming from Bandai Namco website, and I quote, "The land of shadow, a place obscured by the Erdtree where the goddess Marika first set foot, a land perched in unsung battle, set ablaze by Mesmer's flame. It was to this land that Mick departed, divesting himself of his flesh, his strength, his lineage, of all things golden. And now Michaela waits the return of his promised lord." Now on the same page, actually, we got an opportunity of seeing a new story that will entail within this game. Guided by Empyrean Michaela, players are beckoned to the land of shadow, a place obscured by the Erdtree where the goddess Marika first set foot. In these strange new lands, players discover the dark secrets of the world as they meet others who follow in Michaela's footsteps with ulterior motives. Shadow of the Erdtree takes players beyond the lands between to explore the land of shadow, a completely new world from Elden Ring. Players can seamlessly travel back and forth between its vast maps, interspersed with diverse situations and meticulous dungeons where menacing enemies roam. Shadow of the Erdtree adds new weapons, equipment, weapon skills, and magic not found in the base game Elden Ring, along with new enemies, boss encounters, and plot lines to further increase players' RPG freedom. Take on these threats with the new powers you can acquire. So Hidetaka Miyazaki had interviews relating towards Shadow of the Erdtree. For example, one of the questions was raised 1 year after its release on the Elden Ring. Not only had it sold over 20 million copies worldwide, becoming a huge hit, it also won many Game of the Year awards and received excellent reviews. And of course, being received so well by the players, can you tell us again how that makes you feel? And Miyazaki, he answered, "It may be a simple answer, but it makes me very happy." So for us, we try to make games that everyone feels are fun and have value. So we feel great happiness in the fact that there are so many people over the world have felt the value and encouraged us. In Elden Ring, we haven't changed the theme present in our previous title, which is the feeling of achievement through the overcoming challenges. But we also set up the concept of taking that theme and giving it a high degree of freedom to make it more accessible to more players. So the game has sold more than 1 million copies just in Japan, and Miyazaki answers by, "Yes, that also surprised and pleased us. I've had the chance to hear the name Elden Ring many times, not only at work but from people I encounter in daily life, and remembering the feeling, it feels amazing to sell 1 million copies." Now there's a continuation towards another question. I've heard that the development starts from imbuing the experience that you yourself went to give the players into the game. I think all this indicates that this philosophy has resonated with the players. And he answers yes, as the game director, letting players taste the experience we want and having them feel the value and emotion are at the core of the development. Even the feeling of, if it weren't me, I'd want to be killed this way here, for example. However, this isn't everything. My opinion isn't absolute, and if there's a problem or a better way to do something, the staff gives me the frank opinions, and I often agree with those opinions and accept them. This is not specific to Elden Ring, but I believe this is the benefit of creating something with others and the joy of it. Now, continue on, there's a few other questions. As a result, I feel the kind of game development of adjusting balance is being taken to the limit, and that is the core feature of the From Software games. From the point of view of the player experience, Elden Ring's story also being told in a fragmented way of expanding the speculation about the world among players. Miyazaki answers there are several reasons that I have employed fragmented storytelling, including in Elden Ring. First, I want the gameplay experience to become the player's story. For that, we don't tell a rigid story in a verbose way. Additionally, we want to leave some of the story to the player's imagination. This ties into making the gameplay experience the player's story as mentioned earlier, and becoming absorbed in filling the margins with your own imagination is simply fun, I believe. There's also an enjoyment of collecting the fragments in order to understand, like, so that's what it means, it all connects. So continuing on, Shadow of the Erdtree was announced on 2023, but you just now have announced the release date. First, I want to ask, when did the development begin? He answers, we started to imagine what the DLC development would look like around the end of the development of the main game. It became obvious that there were elements in the big picture of Elden Ring that wouldn't fit into the main title, so we thought it would be good to release these to the world as DLC. However, at some point, it was just general idea, as we will still focus on the main release. Actual development work on the DLC started after the release of the main title and after initial patches settled down a bit. So the first thing that intrigued me as the question comes up when I heard that the Shadow of the Erdtree was the meaning of the title. Erdtree refers to the golden tree that appears in the main title. So directly interpreting this, the DLC title means the shadow of this golden tree. In the concept art that was shown in February of 2023, if this Shadow of the Erdtree that looms tall in the left background, and we also call this the Shadow Tree, so the DLC takes place not in the lands between, but the Shadow lands, in which the Shadow Tree is a symbol. Also, there's another small hidden meaning in the title we hope you will figure out when playing the game. So continues on with the question, in relation to the art, one more thing, the person writing Torrent, is it the tree saint Michaela spoken of the main title? Yes. Michaela is the central character in the story told in this DLC. I don't know if you remember, but in the story in the main title, following the grace was simple path. Here you are following the footsteps of Michaela, who headed for the Shadowlands. Further, there's an NPC also following after Michaela. The story of the DLC is told through them, and they cross paths with the players, sometimes as allies, sometimes as enemies. Also, one other main pillar of the DLC story is the history of the Shadowland, and the history of Queen Marika. So, there has been many details just revealed. Please let me ask more. You just mentioned Queen Marika's history. Does this mean that DLC takes place in the past? And Miyazaki answers no. It takes place in the same time as the main title. The setting is not in the distant past or the future. The Shadowlands and the Queen Marika's past will be told the same manner as the Shattering was in the main title. So it continues on with the question, what are the themes you're trying to express in Shadow of the Erdtree? And Miyazaki answers, that's difficult to answer. That's exactly what I'm hoping players will experience for themselves, and it wouldn't come out right if I talked about it here. So another question comes up, the main story of the Elden Ring was told as a heroic tale. Is that the same in the DLC? Miyazaki mentions correct. The theme of being the heroic tale has not changed. The character of Mesmer shown in the key art is a good example. He is another hero. The chair Mesmer sits upon is same as the one shown in a fight with Margot the Omen King in the main title. And he is some of the levels of character like Godric, Melania, Radar, Rickard, and etc. And is referred to as a child of Marika. Now, there's a creation of the DLC story. Is George R.R. Martin still involved? And Miyazaki answers, Martin's involvement is the same as it was in the main title. The world and story of the DLC was inspired by the mythology, and he penned just as in the main title, and was created thus. To be more precise, what was created this time is a part of what was created from the inspiration we took from his mythology for the main title. So there was no additional writing done specifically for the DLC. Another thing that we want to know is about the volume of the DLC. The ones from the Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne were released in about a year. So the expectations for this one are quite huge. Miyazaki answers right, very sorry for keeping you waiting, but speaking about the volume of the DLC, it is clearly larger when compared to Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne. it is no mistake to say that this is our biggest DLC ever. Now that is beyond expectations. Why did it become so large? Miyazaki answers, when we thought about the experience worthy of the Elden Ring, we felt that this size was necessary. There are threats that need to be overcome, and there's degree of a freedom to engage in that. There's an excitement of exploring the unknown and what you might discover at the end of each journey, and altogether Elden Ring worthy adventure. So we get to taste that thrill again. What is the field like in the DLC? It is new, different from the field in the main title. Of course, there's an open field, legacy dungeons, and smaller dungeons. It is larger and more varied than Limgrave in the main title. How is the area accessed? And it's not connected to the main field, you will be teleported there. The entrance is Cocoon on the arm that dangles from it, found in the battle area with Mogd, the Lord of the Blood. Also, in order to access this DLC, you will need to have defeated Mogd and Radahn. Since you can access this later half of the main story, this means that the difficulty is also rather high, and he answers yes. With regards to the stats, it follows that of the latter half of the main game. Basically, the approach towards difficulty is unchanged from the main title. The freedom you have and how you deal with the threats is the same. There's a difficult bosses like Malenia in the main story, who don't need to be defeated. Now it continues on with the questions. Can you go back and forth between the main story field and the DLC field? And Miyazaki answers, yes you can. As I explained earlier, they are not connected by the land, but you can teleport freely between the two. Now, another question, maybe it's a bit too detailed, but how will fast travel work? And Miyazaki answers, this is the same as the main title. When you discover the Site of Grace, you can fast travel there. And next question, can the DLC affect the ending of the main story? Miyazaki answers, no, that won't happen, and the events of the main story will not be affected with the DLC. The story of the DLC will be contained entirely within the DLC. Now, another question, are there any new elements unique to the DLC? Miyazaki's answers. There is an element of leveling unique to the DLC. Think on the attack power system in Sekiro. Separate from the original level system, there is an attack power that is only enabled in the DLC areas. This was introduced in order to give freedom to meet the threats mentioned earlier, as you can do something like exploring other areas before going back to the challenge bosses that were too strong the first time, allowing you to more easily experience this even in a higher level range. On the other hand, by keeping your attack power low, you can also experience this challenge at the lower level. Are there new weapons, magic, or incantations? Miyazaki answers yes, many weapons, spells, weapon arts, etc. have been added. They are one of the main selling points of this DLC, especially weapons. There are 8 new weapons type added. Of course, there are additions to existing weapon types as well. Now, Famitsu asks, 8, there's a great number of weapons in the main title. Specifically, what kinds of new weapons are added to the DLC? And Miyazaki answers, first of all, there are fairly classic large Japanese katanas known as the Odachi, and others are reverse hand swords, Gakute Ken, and more peculiar, highly novel ones. For example, martial arts, if you imagine monks or dual offense defense, dueling shields or throwing daggers that change all attacks into throws. So it should be fun and refreshing for players who have gone through all weapons in the main story. So the weapons revealed in the trailer are definitely something to pay attention to. Also the lion dance enemy that we've never seen before, is that a DLC boss? Miyazaki answers yes, that's a lion dance. In some ways could be considered a very DLC-like boss. In fact, the Shadowlands are where Maria becomes a god and where the Erdtree was born. Of course, there was a culture there before the Erdtree, and that lion dance comes from this culture. So you can get the flavor of different culture from one found in the main title. In the background of the new art, there appears to be some kind of a veil in the sky. And Miyazaki answers yes, the Shadowlands in which DLC takes place are surrounded by the lands between where the main story takes place. It has been removed from and hidden from the outside world, and this veil is a symbol of that. Now, the next question, the mystery only deepens, but I'm looking forward to new discoveries. I might be a bit hasty, but is there a special ending for clearing the DLC areas? Miyazaki answers there's no separate ending. That is to say, nothing like when the credits would roll. However, it is clear when a DLC has been finished. and there's a bit of artistic direction to make you feel that. Are there any more DLCs or anything planned further expand the world of the Elden Ring after this DLC? And Miyazaki answers no. At this point, we have no plan to release another DLC after this one. In terms of the DLC being added to the main story of the Elden Ring, I think this will mark a large milestone. However, that is not to say that all of the Elden Ring has come to an end. I may have said the same thing with Dark Souls 3, but I don't want to make any decisive statements to rule out any future possibilities. Now the question comes up, you decided to also release a bundle of the DLC along with the main title, not just as a standalone DLC. Yes, we would be very happy if there are new players who would take this opportunity to play Elden Ring for the first time. As mentioned earlier, in order to take on the DLC field, you will need to progress a way in the main story. So it may be a good idea to progress the main story before the DLC release. We're still before the DLC's release, but since this is a break at the end of the road, looking back now at the Elden Ring, how do you feel? Miyazaki answers, the DLC development hasn't finished yet, so I can't quite get into that mindset. Whether the main title or the DLC, I'm always frantic while making it and always wish, give me more development time. But having finished, I always feel that it was a very long process. Of course, there was always many hardships, but more than anything, it was an enjoyable time. Starting with the development staff, everyone involved were amazing people and teams. And our involvement with the George R.R. Martin was a huge honor and inspiration. I might get into trouble of saying this, but for me, a large part of the game development is not just work, but it gives a purpose for living. In that way, Elden Ring is a rare experience. I've been blessed with many great fans and consider myself very lucky. I can't help but just feel thankful. And here's the last question. Do you still have the desire to create games on the scale of Elden Ring? And Miyazaki answers, yes I do. I can't say if it's something I can get right away, but if I'm allowed, I want to try. The staff and everyone probably feel the same. We want to take advantage of this experience we had with Elden Ring. But rather than that, and above all, creating huge worlds and adventures is amazingly fun. It thrills me. So other than that, there's also additions that you guys will be able to pre-order and get for yourselves. Now unfortunately, the collector's edition, it is going to be quite tough to get it for yourself since it is pretty much out of stock. Now relating towards Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, first of all, you can actually make a purchase separately if you wish. So for example, you can just simply get Elden Ring, or if you want, you can get Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. And if you wish, you can even go more and get the bundle of both of these games. And with it, and if you of course pre-order, you will get an in-game bonus gesture, Ring of Michaela. Now getting back into track regarding of the collector's edition as mentioned, even though you will not be able to perhaps pre-order for yourself since it is out of stock, this genuinely looks pretty good in terms of what it contains inside. Especially its statue, by the name of Mesmer the Impaler. It is about 46 centimeters tall, quite insane. Includes of course a hardcover art book with 40 pages contained inside. Shadow of the Erdtree voucher code that has an official soundtrack, and of course the game itself as well as a digital form. Another weird thing that came out pretty much nowhere, that Bandai Namco actually started selling an Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree helmet of the Mesmer of the Impaler as well. It'll cost you about $190, 190 euros, so it is a quite expensive product. But if you wish to have it, maybe as a cosplay or just simply as a decoration, yeah, you can definitely pick that up. And then there is Shadow of the Erdtree Premium Bundle that includes a soundtrack and a digital art book, of course including the game too. There's also Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree Deluxe Edition, that's about $100, that involves and includes all the digital content, of course the physical art book and soundtrack, and the game. So there's plenty of things to be looking forward to within this expansion. This is genuinely is a much larger scale comparing to a DLC. I'm very much looking forward to it and I hope it actually will live up to the expectations. And at that, thank you so much for watching, like and subscribe. I'll see you guys all later and yeah, see you guys.